Okay, so we talked about photosynthesis and how photosynthesis is the process where autotrophs make their own food. And the food that they make is called glucose. Well, now once you eat something, you have to break that food down to get energy out of it. And that is the purpose of cellular respiration. So autotrophs have to go through photosynthesis to make glucose. Chemotrophs have to go through chemosynthesis to make glucose. Heterotrophs like us, we have to eat, and our food is turned into glucose. So the question is what do you do with the glucose once you have made it or created it in your body? And the answer is cellular respiration. All cellular respiration is the process of breaking down food to get the energy out of it. So let's go through this process here. First of all, it says a heterotroph or consumer is an organism that obtains its energy and nutrients by eating other organisms. Another word for a heterotroph is a consumer. All organisms, whether a heterotroph or an autotroph, use cellular respiration to get ATP from food. If you'll remember, ATP is energy. Here is the definition for cellular respiration. It is a process that releases chemical energy from sugars to make ATP when oxygen is present. The when oxygen is present is key. If you do not have enough oxygen available, then you cannot break down your food to get energy out of it. Any process that requires oxygen is aerobic. That is where aerobic exercises, that's why it's named that. Those are exercises that require you to breathe a lot, breathe in, breathe out, so the oxygen can be delivered by your blood to the cells of your body. Cellular respiration takes place in the mitochondria. Remember that photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplast, but cellular respiration takes place in the mitochondria. There are many what you call mitochondrial diseases, and those are diseases where your mitochondria for some reason cannot complete cellular respiration accurately. They cannot make enough ATP. Okay, so what is the formula for photosynthesis? Well, if you'll remember the formula, I'm sorry, not for photosynthesis. I was going to say cellular respiration is a mirror process of photosynthesis. What that means is that you can actually just switch the two formulas. The reactants for photosynthesis are the products for cellular respiration and vice versa. So here's your equation. You have Okay, so here's your equation. If you'll look at the Okay, sorry, I got interrupted, but what I was saying, if you'll look at the left side of the equation, those are the reactants. The right side of the equation, that is the products. You'll notice that glucose and oxygen produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So the equation is the exact same, except for you have to add energy to the products, because after all, that's the point. Okay, so here's your essential question. How is food broken down when oxygen is not available? So let's say you're working out and you're not in great shape and you're breathing and you start getting those pains in your side, and then the next day you're really, really sore. Well, what has happened in that case is that you are not getting enough oxygen to your body, so your body goes into a process called fermentation. Let's look at this. Fermentation. So fermentation is what we call an anaerobic process that allows glycolysis to continue. What anaerobic means is without oxygen, and glycolysis is basically just the breaking down of glucose. Okay, the problem is that fermentation doesn't produce very much ATP. So when your body kicks into fermentation, you do not get as much energy. That's why you start feeling so tired. Okay, this is a great formula to help you understand. If you see glycolysis, which is the breaking down of glucose, if it's with oxygen, then you go into cellular respiration, which is what you want. If it's without oxygen, then you go into fermentation, which is not what you want. Okay, there are actually two types of fermentation. Humans and lots of animals, they go into something called lactic acid fermentation. And it says it produces lactic acid in your muscle cells, the cells of other vertebrates, and in some microorganisms. And this is what makes your muscles sore. So when you're working out and you don't have enough oxygen, you start building lactic acid up in your body, and then the next day you're really, really sore, and that's because of the lactic acid that you've built up. Now, yeast and some plants, and of course bacteria, if you deprive them of oxygen, they go through something called alcoholic fermentation. Now, this is a very important process because this is what we use to make bread, and it's what we use to make beer and wine and things like that. But instead of making lactic acid as a byproduct, these things actually make alcohol and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is actually what makes bread rise, and it's what makes like beer have the fizz and the bubble that it has. So we have found a way to use alcoholic fermentation for our advantage. Okay, so importance of fermentation, food production. This is how we make yogurt, cheese, and bread. Bacteria that rely on fermentation aid in digestion in animals. If you remember that we have a mutualistic relationship with bacteria, we have a lot of bacteria in our body that do things for us. Okay, and it's also used to make alcoholic beverages like beer and wine. And that basically ends our discussion on cellular respiration. Just please remember that the purpose is to break down glucose to get ATP, and the formula is the opposite of photosynthesis.